Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Jenny Lynn Moyer, and my pronouns are she, her. I am one of the music coordinators serving Cedar Lane alongside my colleague, Dr. Jasmine Lee. If you are new with us this morning, please let us know in the live chat. Whether you are joining us today for the first time or you've been with us for a lifetime, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. Wherever you are joining us from and however you arrived at our worship time together, you are welcome here. Whatever your beliefs, gender identity and expression, immigration status, or political views, you are welcome here. Thank you for taking a chance and taking the time to worship with us today. We invite you to fill out the newcomer form included in the chat. If you have been attending for a while and are interested in being a member of this religious community, please reach out to Nicole Kazi, our membership coordinator, by emailing her at nkazi@cedarlane.org. Our pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. They are available in the chat today to support you. Yesterday evening, we had our annual benefit concert. We hope you were able to watch it live, but if not, know that it is still available to view on our YouTube channel. This year, Cedar Lane invited Mount Vernon UU Church to provide an eclectic variety of music provided by in-house musicians of each church. We had over 100 live views as we worked to lift up and support Planned Parenthood through song. Thank you. A heartfelt thank you to the many number of you who have contributed to supporting Planned Parenthood during the live stream of the benefit concert. For those of you who have not yet had the opportunity to do so, you can still give at cedarlane.org/give and scroll down to the concert series to contribute to the benefit concert for Planned Parenthood. As we now enter this worship experience of reflection and remembrance, of joys and sorrows, of generosity and compassion, let us be mindful of the land where our beloved church is situated. Let us be mindful of the Piscataway Nakaktank who have walked these lands for thousands of years and more. Let us remember those who were enslaved and worked this land without choice or reward. Let us remember all who have gone before, whose vision and labor helped create and sustain this religious community. In this spirit we gather. In this spirit we begin. Let us greet and welcome each other in the chat.
God is a three-letter word, partner in profanity, companion of the sublime, the deepest down darkness in me, the rainbow wrapped around my shoulder, the mystery beyond all knowing or wanting to know, the poet's literary friend, the justifier of 1,000 horrible deeds, and the why of 1,000,000,000,000 acts of love. The question as inescapable as it is unanswerable, the macrocosmic mystery and the microcosmic explanation. The word when there is a desert with nothing to say, and the subject of jungle of books, the without which nothing, and with which what? The atheist's foil, the agnostic's doubt, God is a simple, deep, dark, light, bright, uptight, three-letter word.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Williams, and I am your worship associate today. I use she, her pronouns, and I will be virtually lighting my chalice in College Park, Maryland. As I read our chalice lighting words, I invite you to share in the chat where you are lighting your chalice from. We gather around this flame that symbolizes the truth we know and the truth we seek, the community we share and the community we aspire to, the learning that enables us and the mystery that encompasses. Here we speak the languages of memory and hope. Here we are welcomed, our diverse spiritual journeys embraced and shared. Here we explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world.
Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean, deep and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples to the sky. What to give you, what to call you, who am I? I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears infernal haunt my heart. What to give you, what to call you, oh my God. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, take our hearts. Take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work to shape our art.
I'm William. And I'm Joseph. And our theme this month is Imagination. Now let's see what's in our wonder box. That reminds us of imagination. This frozen Lego set that I built is magical. And magical reminds me of imagination. This is a Minecraft Lego set that I built a few days ago. And in Minecraft, the video game, you can do whatever you want and build, imagine, and do it. Now, Levin.
Dana Edwards is going to tell us a story about imagination.
Thank you, Joseph and Lillian, for that wonderful intro. Today's story is God's Hat, which is adapted from an ancient African wisdom tale by the Reverend Chris Mice. Once upon a time, there was a village with a road that went straight through the center of town. And one day, something strange happened. God walked down the road, and she was beautiful. She wore a long flowing robe, and on top of her head, there was a wonderful hat. All the people stopped to stare at God as she walked by, and they kept staring and staring until she disappeared in the distance. God sure was beautiful, said one man, and what a beautiful blue hat she was wearing. Yes, God was beautiful, said a woman from the other side of the street. But it wasn't a blue hat that she was wearing, it was a red hat. You are wrong, said the man. It was definitely a blue hat. No, you are wrong, said the woman. It was definitely a red hat. As the two argued, others joined in the dispute, and soon the whole village was arguing. All the people on one side of the street kept insisting that God was wearing a blue hat, and all the people on the other side of the street kept insisting that God was wearing a red hat. Now people got really mad, and they started screaming at each other. And finally, they got so angry at each other that they decided to build a wall right in the middle of the street that went straight down the center of town. And from that point on, the people on one side of the wall were enemies with people on the other side of the wall, and they stopped speaking to each other. They stopped saying hello to each other. They stopped sharing with each other. And on one side of the wall, the people built a church where they worshiped a God that wore a blue hat. And on the other side of the wall, the people built a temple where they worshiped a God that wore a red hat. And so many years passed, and the people were still enemies, and they were still not talking to each other. Then, one day, God came walking back through the village. She was smiling and balancing on top of the wall that the people had built many years ago, and she was humming to herself. And this time, God was wearing no hat at all. Now, all the people, upon seeing God, ran to the wall and cried out, God, God, you must settle our argument. Yes, said God. Someone said, the people on that side of the street say that when you walked through the village many years ago, you were wearing a blue hat. But we know better. We know you were wearing a red hat. So tell us, God, what color was your hat? Now, God looked puzzled for a moment and began to scratch her head in thought. She thought, I think I remember walking through this village many years ago, she said. And on that day, I believe I was wearing my hat that was blue on one side and red on the other. And saying nothing more, God continued walking down the wall until she disappeared off in the distance. And then it got very quiet for a moment. And suddenly there was the sound of one child laughing. Then another child started laughing, and another child, and soon the adults joined in, and soon the whole village was roaring with laughter. Everyone was laughing because they realized how foolish they had been. And as the sound of laughter grew louder and louder and louder, the wall began to shake and crumble until finally it came tumbling down to the ground. And for many, many years after that day, the people told the story of God's hat and how laughter had torn down the wall between a divided and foolish people. The end.
Every Sunday, we take up an offering. It is good to remind ourselves from time to time that the offering is symbolic as well as practical. We know that it's through financial pledges that we build our budget and fund our mission and ministries of worship, religious education, pastoral care, and social justice. We pay our staff and our professional religious leaders and finance the comfort and beauty of our buildings. We pass the plate during our worship service to make a community expression of thanks for the blessings of abundance, to visibly bring in the harvest at this, our most cherished hour of the week. Our offering says that the act of giving is as essential to our spiritual well-being as anything else we do here on Sunday mornings. There are many ways to give at Cedar Lane. You can give by the electronic means of our modern times, text, online giving, PayPal, or QR code, or by mailing a check to the church. This week, we are giving to support the UU Legislative Ministry of Maryland. Let's hear more about this important work from Reverend Diane Teichert, followed by a new proposed Maryland state song written by Representative Jamie Raskin and composed by Cedar Lane member Steve Jones. Every Sunday.
Greetings, Unitarian Universalists at Cedar Lane. My name is Diane Teichert. I'm Minister Emerita of Paint Branch UU Church and one of the vice chairs of UU Legislative Ministry of Maryland, which you are supporting today. Thank you so much for that and for your past support and involvement in our organization. You know, in the recent past, we've all necessarily been focused on the national level, but now our state legislature is in session. This is our chance, just a few months, to influence the legislation that will bring about greater racial and economic and social justice in our state. This is the role our organization plays. It's the only one that does that. And if we don't get involved in what's going on in Annapolis, we will all be the worse off for it. So please join us, get on our list, receive our emails so that you know when and how to reach your legislators when it will be most effective. In a few minutes, you're going to see a video that we're so proud to have been able to support and be enthused by in these recent months. A video that we hope will become the new state song, composed by your own Steve Jones, and you'll recognize several of your own singers in it. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for your generosity today.
The free state began to find its name. Harriet Tubman built a secret lane to come on board this freedom train. Maryland, my Maryland, I'm coming back again. From the western mountains to the ocean city shore, Rockville to Baltimore, Maryland's my Maryland. Rachel Carson told of the silent spring, of the time when birds no longer sing.
Restore the Chesapeake for me and you.
And all the Orioles will come home too. Maryland, my Maryland, I'm coming back again. From the western mountains to the ocean city shore, Rockville to Baltimore, Maryland's my Maryland. The artist's dream, the writer's words will flow. We come back to the grave of Edgar Allan Poe.
Our gardenia in the hair of Billie Holiday tells the promise of Maryland today.
Maryland, my Maryland, I'm coming back again. From the western mountains to the ocean city shore, Rockville to Baltimore, Maryland's my Maryland. With a Catonsville, Easton, or Monocacy, we find the courage to make democracy.
St. Frederick Douglass's message to all the land.
If you want progress, come and make your demand. Maryland, my Maryland, I'm coming back again. From the western mountains to the ocean city shore, Rockville to Baltimore, Maryland's my Maryland.
Oh, say, can you see Elijah Cummings now? Never took his hand from the freedom plow.
And Justice Thurgood Marshall brought down Jim Crow.
So let the waters of righteousness flow.
Maryland, our Maryland, we're coming back again. From the western mountains to the ocean city shore, Rockville to Baltimore, Maryland's my Maryland.
Each Sunday, we set aside time to expand the caring ministry of our congregation. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the heart of our religious community. We hold in our circle of caring those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, and those who care for family members in ill health, those who are experiencing job loss and financial insecurity, and all those for whom parenting is a primary spiritual practice. Within our Cedar Lane community, we celebrate with Susan and Anand Modak, who are pleased to welcome their first grandchild, Kieran Modak Cassidy, born January 10th. Kieran and his parents, Joanna and Kyle, are all doing well. Congratulations. We hold in our hearts Lori Stone, her husband Ivan, their children, and her aunt Beverly and cousin Nadine as they mourn the loss of Lori's 82-year-old cousin Dick Hawk, who passed last Thursday. We hold in our hearts Susan and Brian McNellis and their family as they mourn the loss of Susan's father. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by calamities and violence in our nation and in our world. We hold in our hearts the more than 444,000 loved ones who have died from COVID-19 in the US, and the millions who are infected, and those who continue to risk their health and well-being to keep us safe, fed, and connected. In the spirit, holding all these joys and sorrows and those that were unspoken, let us center ourselves for a time of prayer, reflection, and meditation. Would you pray with me? Nameless one of many names and no name, God within and without, mystery that defies expectation and description. We have gathered here in search of answers to hard questions, questions that emerge out of our anxiety and our holy curiosity. We gather in search of understanding, in search of community. We gather in search of hope and healing, of dialogue and listening. Let this be a place not only for searching, but of discovery. Let this be a place not only of learning, but of wisdom. Let this be a place not only of meeting, but of connection. And let this be a place where healing fosters giving and hope fosters service. This is our prayer, O Holy One, that we may create here an ever-expanding circle of love, ever growing as we seek to know you, the ground and the source of our being. In the name of all that is holy, life-affirming, and life-sustaining, we say, Shalom, Salam, Om Shanti, Sat Sri Akal. Amen. Blessed be. As we enter the silence together, those who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of a loss are invited to rise in body or in spirit, or to name the lost loved ones in the chat. Let us enter the silence together.
So I was asked to do a reflection on God, which I find pretty interesting, considering if most people ask me point blank, I'd say I'm an atheist. I have a long history of thinking about God and the purpose of God in my life and in other people's lives, and it's transformed a lot since I was a kid. My parents were raised Catholic, so I grew up praying at the dinner table and developing a habit of praying before bed and thinking about the reasons God made me and the reasons things happened in my life. And in some ways it was comforting. But even as a child, I thought that it wasn't really fair to God. My nightly prayers shifted less and less to asking God for things and God for help, and more on checking in on this friend that I talked to. I thought it was very sad how there was this beautiful world that we lived in, and our amazing existence of being able to choose our lives before us. And we kept asking for more. I find the metaphor of God being a parent very salient. If I was a parent, I imagine that the reason I wanted to have a kid was because having a kid and watching them choose their life before them and make the world theirs would be amazing. I think it's sad for a being to have so much freedom and yet constantly ask to be told what to do, to be told our purpose. We do not give birth to our children for purpose, but because the experience of living is wonderful. I have found it sad how we keep trying to find meaning when there is beautiful mystery. As I grew older, I continually questioned how people made God a thing in their lives and how they justified the need, and seemed to find that as people looked out into the world, they found it was beautiful. And to them, that meant there must be some intention, in a similar way that they felt that there was intention behind their existence and their lives. Maybe because I like science, maybe just who I am, maybe because my version of God, even as a child, was intensely human, but I don't see beauty as necessitating intention. I think that the world and the universe is gorgeous, and part of why it's gorgeous is that it just happens to be here. I don't think that I need to have anything as an afterlife to be content and whole. I think that our ways of being and interacting with each other have as much meaning as we give them. And even if there was a God, which I don't quite think there is, I think that that's the point, is for us to find that meaning for ourselves. We have the free will. We live in this beautiful, crazy, junked up universe, and it's gorgeous, and we don't understand it, and it's mysterious, and when we die, we become part of it again. And that's beautiful. There doesn't need to be anything more behind it. This isn't to say that your life has no meaning. It's to say that the meaning is the one that you make. You decide to be the person that you are, not someone else, God or not. I've spent a lot of time with the question of, if there was a God, what would they be like? And my conception is still a pretty human version of a God. Growing up, being raised on prayer, I still pray pretty often. It's a comforting experience for me to think about this all-knowing being. But even then, when I ask to talk to this person, this being, this entity of the universe, they did not intend for my creation. They made the basic laws that dominate everything, and I just happened to show up and be someone to talk to. They did not give me meaning, but they hope that I figure it out. They wish me the best. They wish everyone the best. And they're sad that the beautiful world that we have somehow is still not enough. And I think back to my parents, who worked really, really hard to give us everything we possibly could. And being young, sometimes I could not understand why that meant I could not get very expensive things. I could not understand why I didn't have a little bit more direction in my life, but that's just living. Sure, on long time scales, our lives are meaningless, but we don't live in those. And I love that I get to develop this meaning. I love that I get to interact with people. And I don't think it's cold or scary or haunting that I don't think there's anything when I die. I know that I will become one with the universe again. I will be disintegrated into beautiful star stuff, and the universe will continue in this beautiful synergistic mystery that we are trying to figure out. And I think that even if God exists, the whole point is to revel in that mystery, but not to force it to have meaning or to believe that there's already one there. Part of living is figuring out that meaning for yourself. I do not believe in fate. If that is not clear, I am very much you are what you create yourself to be. And I think part of that is my beliefs in God. So yeah, if you ask me, I'd say I'm an atheist, but I still pray because it's comforting. And I think that in developing my own existence, my very humanized version of God just needs a friend. And so we talk. But I don't think that God determines my life. I don't think God determines anyone's life. And similar to being a parent, they just want us to be happy and figure out what that means for us. And I hope that is comforting to you, and that you also can be happy and figure out what that meaning is for you and how it shows up in your life without desperately searching for the thing you were born to do. Because the only thing you were born to do is be you. Whatever that means, only you know.
From a distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to flight.
From a distance there is harmony, and it echoes through the land.
It's the
Voice of hope,
It's the
voice of peace.
It's the voice of every man. From a distance, we are having love, and no one is in need. There are no guns, no bombs, no disease, no hungry mouths to feed.
From a distance we are instruments, marching in a common band.
Laying,
Songs of hope,
laying,
songs of peace.
they're the songs of every man.
God is watching us, God is watching us.
God is watching us from a distance. from a distance, I just can't comprehend what all this fighting's for.
From a distance there is harmony, and it echoes through the land.
It's the
Hope of hopes,
it's the
love of loves,
it's the heart of
every man.
It's the hope of hopes. It's the love of love. It's the song of every man.
And God is watching us. God is watching us.
God is watching us from a distance.
God is watching us. God is watching.
God is watching us from a distance.
I begin my reflections this morning with a note of caution. Someone claiming to tell the truth about their own lives or about their views on God can imply things that do not capture the fullness of truth. Not really a barefaced lie, but an implied exaggeration. A suggestion to hook the listener's heart or tease something out of your experiences based on their own experiences. And into this mix of caution, I have to toss in this wonderful insight from the great Federico Fellini, who, when asked about his use of outlandish, over-the-top characters in his films, once answered, "Sometimes when you exaggerate, the truth is truer." So, what I'm saying is there is ultimately no place for me to get to a secure abstract point of reference in order to explore the question and the existence of God without delving into my own life stories. And I offer them this morning both as self-clarifier and hopefully as a stimulus for your own exploration. After all, as the Reverend Tom Owen Toole said, it is through keeping current with God that we invigorate our very humanity, since theology and anthropology are braided together. I love that. So here goes. I grew up Hindu, believing that God is everywhere, within me, within others, in nature. God was male, female, and both. Half human, half animal, was a monkey, turtle, or even a fish. The gods of my childhood were adventurous gods, full of courage, charm, wit, wisdom, chutzpah, and guile. One of my favorites was the dark-complexioned Krishna, an incarnation of Vishnu, the god of preservation. I loved Krishna's childhood exploits, stealing butter, playing tricks on people, loafing around with friends on trees, tending to cows, and fighting evil demons. My grandmother would remark that I resembled Krishna, both in complexion and mischief. As an only child, I imagined God as my playmate, my companion, and my friend. As I grew older, my preoccupation with God became rather intense. I went to the temple regularly for darshan, which in Sanskrit means to see and to be seen by the divine, and in my case, neighborhood girls as well. I used God, whether currying divine favor before tough exams and sports events, or about not getting caught by my mother when I would sneak off to the movies. Now, this dependency served me quite well through high school. In college, reason became a factor in my God or non-God consciousness. I questioned God's existence, though I never went all the way to becoming an atheist. So I resonated deeply when I encountered Carl Sagan's views on the subject in Broca's Brain. And I quote, "Those who raise questions about God and the soul are by no means all atheists. An atheist is someone who is certain that God does not exist, someone who has compelling evidence against the experience of God. I know of no such compelling evidence because God can be relegated to remote times and places and to ultimate causes. We would have to know a great deal more about the universe than we do now to be sure that no such God exists. To be certain of the existence of God and to be certain of the non-existence of God seem to me to be the confident extremes in a subject so riddled with doubt and uncertainty as to inspire very little confidence indeed. A wide range of intermediate positions seems admissible, considering the enormous emotional energies which the subject is invested. A questioning, courageous, and open mind seems to be the essential tool for narrowing the range of our collective ignorance on the subject of the existence of God." End of quote. So I brought my questioning mind to seminary, hoping to find some answers. I studied Spinoza, who used the words God and universe interchangeably. I heard feminist classmates quote people like Hattie Gossett: "If there has to be a God, then it is a committee of women dedicated to wiping out earthly oppression." I encountered Henry Nelson Wyman, who wrote about God as creative interchange, and Paulus Tillich, who said, "God is the ground of all being, our ultimate concern." In our own tradition, I learned that the Unitarian side tells us that there is only one God, one spirit of life, one power of love. That the Universalist side tells us that God is a loving God, condemning none of us, valuing the spark of divinity that is in every human being. I had long conversations with the late Forrest Church, who made his affirmation about God by saying, "God is not God's name. It is our name for that which is greater than all and yet present in each. It is our construct. It is our symbol." And conversations with Black UU theologian Bill Jones, who asked in his book of the same name if God is actually a white racist. The perverse mixture of God talk with the cruel and immoral construction and perpetuation of systemic racism, both in this country and in South Africa, led him to wonder if it's even possible to affirm God in any other way after such a connection is made. I encountered liberation theologians like Peruvian priest Gustavo Gutierrez and Brazilian Leonardo Boff, who asserted that God is revealed as having a preferential option for these people who are insignificant, marginalized, needy, despised, and defenseless, that God is revealed in the historical praxis of liberation. I read the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who saw God as the source of our divine dissatisfaction, who calls us to be socially maladjusted to racism, to poverty, and militarism in the world. After theologians and prophets, I turned to the poets. I immersed myself in the poems of Maulana Rumi, who spoke of God by speaking of his rapturous love for the teacher Shams. I read the incandescent poetry of Gerard Manley Hopkins, "God is the deepest down freshness in things," and Maya Angelou, "God is a God with a terrific sense of humor and tenderness and patience." In ministry, I have encountered God in the being and in the doing, in relationship, in work shared, in justice served. I experienced God as presence in the midst of joy and sorrow, birth and death, loss and grief, terror and triumph. So where am I now in my lifelong rowing toward God, to borrow from Anne Sexton? That's another great poem, by the way. Well, for starters, I don't believe in a God who, as Anne Lamott calls, the standard God of our childhoods, who loves and guides you, and then, if you're bad, roasts you. God as high school principal in a gray suit who never remembered your name but is always leafing unhappily through your files. I don't believe in that God. I don't believe in a God who roots for particular countries, demands prayer in public schools or at football games or cricket matches for that matter, blesses some and damns others, clothes politicians in sanctity, or roots for a particular political party, urges death upon non-believers, hates gay people, or likes to be a celestial peeping Tom. I don't believe in that God. I don't believe in God as an intellectual proposition either. The question, do you believe in God, is really, for me, a meaningless question. Because the question really is, do you agree with my understanding of God? And until I know that, I cannot answer the question. And so, when people ask me, I am tempted to respond, do you mean your kind of God? I don't believe that anything that human beings can say has even a chance of being final or clear. After all, we are part and parcel of the universe. We are not outside it, nor do we stand still or sit still within it, but move and flow with everything else. A brilliance of atoms and empty space moving through a brilliance of atoms and empty space that is the mysterious cosmos. I feel a deep kinship with the mystery and power of life that is way beyond my imagining. Sometimes I attribute it to a consciousness inhabiting and supporting all creation, to which I sometimes attune. That's the part of me that really resonates with the ancient Hindu idea of Brahman, the impersonal reality underlying all phenomena, to which all phenomena will return, the basis and ground of all being, all creation, manifest within as Atman, the divine spark. Now, this does not sound like any idea of God found in the West, except perhaps John the Scotus Eriugena around the time of Charlemagne. And yet, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of images of the divine in India, elaborate in dress and color and power and presence. Is this polytheism, as some Westerners like to insist, or is it that each of these images is a facet in the jewel of the ineffable, playfully putting a local and cultural face on what has no face, putting a multicolored hat on a head that has no head nor no hat? It's hard to relate to an impersonal reality after all. That is why I often think of God in personal terms. I believe that God is within, among, and beyond, and more than all combined, that I participate in God and God participates in me, in and through my relationships, that I serve God when I serve love and work for justice. For me, God is being, not a being. God is being in the sense of being and becoming the ground of all being. God is more verb than noun. God is not a person in a place, but a process that embraces us. I believe that the experience of the God within takes us beyond ourselves to discover that God is in the struggle, in the call to justice, the call to equality, the call to liberation. God, in this sense, is struggling alongside us, circulating in the midst of sorrow, suffering, and evil. Elie Wiesel tells the story of a Jew who used to be taunted by his Nazi guards. One day, he was ordered to clean out the filthy toilets. A guard standing over him gloatingly yelled, "Okay, where's your God now?" And the man replied quietly, "Right down here. Right down here with me in this muck." I seek and find God in nature, in the soft sound of snow on a wintry morning. And as ornithologist Drew Lanham describes in his poem, Love for a Song, we want the wild soul, and a shadow-dwelling wood thrush heaps it on us in self-harmonizing sonata. We revel in wildflower bloom, marvel in the migratory sojourns of birds dodging falling stars. Sink yourself deep in the dizzying dance of pollen-drunk bees. Find hope in the relieved canopies of the tallest trees. Wind and water, storm and surf, they can move us to other ends. Therein is the turn-on. It's the honey-sweet seduction. Nature asks only that we notice a sunrise here, a sunset there. The surge, that overwhelming, inexplicable thing in a swallow's joyous flight, or the dawning of new light that melts heart and head into sensual soul in that moment of truly seeing. That is love. That is God. I believe that love is God, a love that is not an abstraction, but deeply personal, that transcends biology and hormonal urges. Mahatma Gandhi taught me that, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and a few thousand other amazing people, including my grandfather, who loved life and people more than they were afraid of death. This is the belief to which I give my heart, because it serves me, heals me, challenges me, and liberates me. I seek and find God, though often I don't pay attention, in loving others that I meet, in seeing something deeper in them than just their pain, but also in facing the worst possible situations, knowing that I need something more. So when I turn to face suffering and grief and seek the courage to refuse to let it define me, I do get a faint glimpse of God. Not as something to believe in or disbelieve in, but as an intimation of how I can move through this broken yet beautiful world with my broken heart and my insecure self, and my feet on the ground with my eyes wide open. Yes. God has never left me nor forsaken me. The thought steals my legs and props me upright. So, resonating with Walt Whitman's claim, do I contradict myself? Yes, I contain multitudes. I joyously declare that I am an atheistic, agnostic, mystical, humanistic theist. I am a religious hybrid, a spiritual mutt who is comfortable with living in the interstices, the fault lines and gaps of theological paradoxes. Well, friends, you probably don't know any more about God now than at the beginning of my reflections, because I have danced around quite a bit this morning, offering glimpses of something that is beyond our imagination. On the other hand, why would I want to spoil the joy of personal discovery? Because I'm still discovering, and perhaps you are too. So as we explore the possibilities of faith and faithfulness, may we open our hearts and stretch our minds to the love which transforms us as we cannot transform ourselves, whether it comes from within or without, opening ourselves to that reliable, trustworthy love that will not let us go, let us down, or let us off the hook, that fires our hearts with its presence, calling us toward wholeness, toward life, and toward the creation of communities of justice, equity, and compassion. So I close with these ancient prayers from the Hindu Upanishads that say, may we see the existence of all things in the Supreme Spirit, and see the existence of the Supreme Spirit in all things. May we see that Spirit in everyone. May the divine protect us together. May the divine nourish us together. May we work together, uniting our strength for the good of humanity. May our learning be luminous and purposeful. May we never hate one another. May there be peace, peace, and perfect peace. Om yo devogno yopsu yo vishvam bhuvanamavivesha ya oshadhishu yo vanaspatishu tasmai devaya namo namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinamaditamasttu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us now join our hearts and our voices to sing together Beethoven's Ode to Joy, which represents the triumph of universal love against war and poverty and violence, and wishes for peace and freedom among all peoples.
Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, God of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, hail thee as the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the pain of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the joy of day. All thy works with joy surround the earth, and heaven reflect thy rays. Stars and planets sing around thee, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, blossoming meadow, flashing sea, chanting birds and flowing fountain, call us to rejoice in thee. Thou art giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed, wellspring of the joy of living, ocean depth of happy rest. Ever singing march we onward, victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music lifts us onward in the triumph song of life.
you.